Hey guys, here we are with my official prediction video of Andre Ward versus Sergey Kovalev, the rematch. So this is a really interesting fight. There are a lot of things that are going to affect the outcome of the fight, and I'll talk about those in a second. I want to recap the keys to victory for each fighter. So, number one, both fighters are going to want to use their jab to control the other fighter. Kovalev is going to be the one pushing forward, so he's going to be using his jab to probe and feint and make Andre Ward be the one to act first, right? To use the feints and use the probes to make Andre Ward put himself out of position, right? Because if you and use that as to set up your punches. Because if you don't set your punches up, if you just run out there and throw like a right hand at Andre Ward, or at any pro fighter for that matter, they're going to be able to slip the shot or counter or do whatever, and stop that from becoming a scoring blow and actually look for opportunities to set up their own offense off of your punches, right? And that's just a fundamental thing about boxing. A lot of people don't always understand that you don't just get to throw punches at your opponent. You have to set them up because this is not their first rodeo. So Kovalev's going to need to set his punches up and use the probes and put Andre Ward out of position, something that he did very well early in the fight, including when he scored the knockdown, whereas Andre Ward's going to need to control the distance with his jab, how do you say it? He's going to have to respect the feints, use his jab to not just occupy the distance, because that didn't go very well for him in the first fight, but actually control the distance and make Kovalev be the one to go first, right? And that's the theory behind controlling your opponent with your jab, is to make them work around it so that they walk into shots. So if you're just using your jab, right, and you're just sticking it out there, probing, right, your opponent has to work around it. They have to figure something out. So effectively, they put themselves out of position, and then you can capitalize it. It's the same thing as just exploding out of your guard and throwing a punch. You put yourself out of position to land offense with your opponent being in position to counter you or to slip or to do whatever they want to do. Andre Ward's going to need to control the distance between them, not only so that he can stop Sergey Kovalev from being comfortable and setting up his own offense, but to help work his way inside as well. Another key to victory, and I have these videos, I gave them stupid-ass titles. If you guys, let me know what you guys think about the titles too. I was just having fun with them. The second is maintaining distance, and ironically, Ward wants to use his jab to control the distance, and Kovalev actually just wants to maintain the distance. He never wants the distance to be controlled, whereas Andre Ward needs to use his jab to control the distance so that he can come in and work on the inside when he needs to, and control the distance to stop Kovalev from landing his offense on the outside. Going back to the controlling the distance, another factor of Andre Ward's jab, or not his jab, I don't want to use that term. I think that knowledge of the power that your left hand has gets kind of lumped in with the jab, which is a punch, and using your jab to feint and probe is not punching. Using it to control your opponent is not punching. You're not jabbing your opponent. You're using it as a tool. It's a skill. But he wants to, when he's respecting the feints and he's controlling the distance, his goal is to kind of get Kovalev to get frustrated and to not be patient, and to kind of come in and commit to punches so that he can close the distance, and then work his way inside so that he can fight on the inside and kind of outwork or out wrestle or whatever against Kovalev. And that's where he's going to get the most amount of credit for his offense. Ironically, there were a lot of situations where Kovalev in the first fight was landing bigger shots on the inside. But there's this, I didn't want to touch too much about this, but there's a strange theory that was kind of going around about fighters being, what is it called? Out of form, and something that I don't really subscribe to. People think that if the fight is being fought on the inside, Andre Ward's winning it. If it's fought on the outside, Kovalev is winning it. So it kind of compartmentalizes your need to actually score the fight because you just assume this is where Andre Ward wants to be, he's winning, versus on the outside, this is where Kovalev wants to be, Kovalev's winning, right? So I don't necessarily subscribe to that form idea. I know a fellow YouTuber made an interesting video about it, and there were some compelling anecdotes in it, but for the most part, if you look back at fights, oh god, I'm on this crazy tangent. One of the first fights that I ever saw was Mayweather vs. Castillo 1, and I had spent most of my youth fighting, playing body shots with people, and I had gloves in my car that I'd carry around and just ask strangers if they wanted to box or if they wanted to fight or whatever they wanted to do, and I was just fucking fighting everybody. And I remember seeing that fight when I was 15 or 16. I know I was in high school, and thinking, wow, Mayweather, this is exactly where Mayweather wants to be. He's definitely winning this fight. All that work all those punches that Castillo's landing, that ain't shit. Mayweather's letting him hit him. To be fair, I didn't even know these guys' names. I was just watching it as on HBO. And, and in my mind, I was like, oh, he's letting him. He wants to be there. This is him working. He's wearing him out so he can land his own shots or whatever. And, with my limited boxing knowledge, nearly none, just a lot of stupid street fights and whatever, I was like, oh, this is his form. This is his tactic. This is what he wants to do, so he's winning. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that anymore. I also don't really care who won that fight. It was an interesting fight to watch when I was a kid, so we don't need any comments about that. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of credence to when the fight is being fought on the inside, that people are going to assume, even the judges may assume, that that Andre Ward is getting the best of it. So it's going to be in Kovalev's best interest to maintain the distance. Another thing that he's going to want to do, and I'll just finish out Kovalev's keys to victories, and you guys can go watch those videos. It'll be the Crusher's keys to victories, is countering to the body. Andre Ward doesn't always set up his punches, and he kind of telegraphs them a lot. He kind of stops, and he'll kind of explode out of his guard and make it really easy to counter him. But he hides his chin pretty well usually, whether it be with his actual punch or with his shoulder, or the fact that he turns his body so much because he doesn't have the greatest boxing stance. There's nothing wrong with it. He fights really well out of it, but the way that it is, it takes away a lot of opportunities to score. He's very sideways usually against his opponent, whereas Kovalev's hips are a little more square, and that's why he's able to get more power in his punches, and rotate his hips more. But Kovalev needs to, instead of throwing those counters and trying to land them to the head, because Ward ducks down really well, even though sometimes he gets a little too low. He mitigates a lot of the head shots because he has good head movement or good shoulder defense, practical defense, with some of his own punches. But so Kovalev needs to go to the body, and that'll discourage Andre Ward from throwing punches, exploding out of his guard, and that'll be able to limit his offense. The next thing is is Kovalev fights really well on the outside. So if he's feinting and probing and he's controlling Andre Ward and he's able to keep Andre Ward reacting to what he's doing, making him go first, making Andre Ward go first, and he's able to maintain the distance, he's going to mitigate almost all of Andre Ward's avenues for offense. That makes it so that as long as he's patient, I feel like he's going to have the advantage in the fight. But also, as long as he's able to land punches, right? If he's able to stop Andre Ward, like in this scene right here, from controlling the distance with his jab and catching him with his own punches. But don't chase Andre Ward. Don't run into him. Don't get impatient. Like right here, you see Andre Ward's able to get close. And I don't think that the headlocks and stuff are going to be as relevant in this fight. I think it's going to have kind of like the Kell Brook effect, right? Where for months and months and months, people have been talking about, oh, he's just going to be holding Errol Spence. And there was so little holding in that fight that it was ridiculous. And people are still saying that in the first fight, that was the first half of the fight, that was the only reason that he was winning the fight was because of the holding. But I think that people are going to be focused on the headlock, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of headlocks. So Andre Ward's going to be able to work his way in a little better because Kovalev's not going to get away with it. Whether or not they were instigated by Andre Ward coming in with his head or grabbing his body or wrapping him up or not is not the point. Kovalev is not going to be able to use that as a defensive tactic to mitigate Andre Ward's offense on the inside again. Now, going back to Andre Ward for his craft, and I'll call it craft, he doesn't have a lot of the conventional tools for setting up his offense. He wants to work his way inside, and people, they definitely are much less schooled fighting on the inside than they were back in the day. Clinching has become so much more of a tool in boxing that fighters are much more comfortable, getting on the inside and just grabbing and holding. Whereas if you see a fighter like Canelo, who's kind of a throwback fighter, I can't even remember the last time I saw him clinch, or any time that I've ever seen him clinch. He'll fight on the inside. He'll keep his hands to himself. He'll probably get clinched, Canelo will. But Andre Ward seeks to take advantage of that, that very, 2000 style boxing where people just get in close and then body up and hold. And he looks to take advantage of that style of fighting that's very popular in this era by wrapping their arms up and punching on the inside. And he's very active. If it were legal, I would say that he would be the best in boxing at it. But the fact of the matter is that you're allowed to punch when your opponent is clinching you. You're not allowed to punch when you are clinching your opponent. People talk about clinch game. You're not allowed to go in and grab your opponent and then start punching them. And that's kind of what it devolves into sometimes. But being realistic, he's going to get credit for a lot of these shots because just like a lot of people thought that Sergey Kovalev was the one responsible for the headlocks and the holding and stuff, it's extremely hard, biased or unbiased of a fan or a referee or a judge, to see who holds first because it all just happens so fast. You can kind of see sometimes, oh, he holds him, oh, he held first, or, but it's very difficult. So, being practical, Ward's going to get a lot of credit for that. And part of his craft, going back to the keys to victory, is his jab to the body. This is going to be extremely important because in the first fight between them, so much of his offense was actually set up off of this. So many of his jabs to the head, so many of the ways he was able to work his way inside. He was able to set up left hooks off of it. He was also able to stop Kovalev from approaching him just by feinting a jab to the body, because then Kovalev doesn't know if he's going to work his way in, if he's going to throw a hook, if he's going to jab to the head, if he's going to jab to the body. And it really conditioned Kovalev to not be 100% prepared for what Andre Ward was going to do, and it opened up so many more avenues of of attack for Andre Ward, and I think that I'm not sure. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about the narratives at the end of the fight, what each fighter is or is not going to get away with in the fight, and how the fight may wind up or may not. But it's going to be extremely important that he finds a way to get his jab to the body going, so that he can land offense, because he, aside from working on the inside, Andre Ward usually explodes out of his guard. He doesn't feint a lot or probe, and he leaves himself very susceptible to counter punches. As you saw right there, Kovalev feinted him or probed him and then caught him with a right hand. And then right there again, the next one, the key to victory for Ward is working his way inside. I think there might be some clips in here. Like, I just picked 3 random videos that I made previously and threw them together. So I don't know what's being shown in this clip over and over again. But Ward needs to work his way inside. He can't just, give one head movement and then try to work his way inside, because Kovalev was catching him with those shots. Kovalev has excellent footwork. And even in my keys to victory, I didn't show all of the examples of Kovalev being able to create space and catch Ward with left hooks or uppercuts or whatever. And that's going to be something, again, that Kovalev needs to do, is create space. But if Ward is able to feint and probe those insides, he's going to be able to create offense off of even just feinting coming inside. And that'll give him more opportunities to score. The last thing is, don't punch with Sergey Kovalev. We saw how that worked out for him, caused the knockdown. We saw a bunch of other right hands. We saw him get hit with, like, when they would trade jabs in the first round, Ward almost got knocked down by that first jab. Kovalev is a much bigger puncher, and he didn't even score very many times during the course of the fight with opportunities where he was punching with Kovalev. And I think that the danger just outweighs the potential scoring opportunities that he has. The danger to get knocked out is just too high. So with all those keys to victory in place, I think overall Kovalev has the easier avenues to score and to land punches. I think that Kovalev has the tools to stop Andre Ward from getting in the fight, from getting inside and landing scoring blows, even without the headlock and stuff. Just using his distance, using his probes to control the distance, to be able to time Ward. And I think that, if there's any credence to him having faded in the first fight, that he's going to have, if he's in good shape this time, he'll have much better opportunities for scoring throughout the course of the fight. Whereas I think Ward's opportunities to score are just so much more limited, because I wouldn't advise him to counterpunch with Kovalev. And most of his offense is set up off of the jab to the body. Not even just a regular jab, but feinting like it's a jab to the body. And then also getting on the inside. So a couple of the narratives of the fight, there's been a lot of talk about the headlock from Kovalev. There's a lot of talk about Kovalev fading late in the first fight. Also, a lot of talk about Andre Ward's headbutt. I'm not sure how much of that has been brought to light by Kovalev to the referee, or how much of it is brought to the referee's attention about the holding and hitting. But if we assume that, so I don't think, like I said, I don't think that Kovalev is necessarily going to gas, but I also don't think it was just a question of him gassing in the first place. I think that a lot of that had to do with Andre Ward, actually just being bigger than Kovalev. Like, his body looks so much more filled out in these clips than Kovalev. Kovalev looks, I don't want to say dry, but just not as big, even though he looks taller. Andre Ward just looked stronger on the inside, especially. And I think that the wrestling, the jockeying for position and how hard Kovalev worked to drag Andre Ward to the ropes in each of the little clips where they're tying up, I think that really just gassed Kovalev. I don't think that he had the energy to maintain that. Wrestling is really, really difficult. And that said, with Andre Ward being so much bigger now, like if you see those clips, he's fucking huge. If Andre Ward is able to work his way inside, or if he can, take a couple punches even to get inside, he might be able to wear Kovalev down again with the wrestling. And if he's allowed to do the holding and hitting, it's very crafty. It looks good sometimes. And it's hard. It is hard for the referee to always be able to tell who's holding who and this is and that, and how you discern whose clinch is whose, right? Is Kovalev clinching him and those are legal punches? Is Ward clinching him and those are not illegal punches because he's punching? Sociologically, because so many people are okay with it, it's just becoming part of the rules. Whether we like it or not. I know there are a few people who are going to comment, be like, it's not part of the rules. I know. I fucking know already. You guys don't got to tell me. I know. But being realistic about it, the clinch is, evolving just like any sport does. Just like, the rules for any sport. Mixed martial arts is constantly evolving their rules, for like, well, we don't have to talk about that. But the sport just evolves. It just does. And the things that Andre Ward does in the fights are becoming more and more okay, whether people like it or not. So, with all that said, I think that if Kovalev is able to maintain the distance, he's going to easily outpoint Andre Ward for the first couple of rounds. And then I think Andre Ward might realize it, just like he realized it in this fight, in the first fight. And then Andre Ward will start working hard. You cannot deny that Andre Ward didn't try his goddamn heart out. Like, holy shit, did he work hard to squeeze those rounds to try to get back into it. Heart of a champion. You cannot take that away from him regardless. And I think that that might wind up making him run into a shot. And I think that, if Kovalev is, not gassed, I think it's going to be a very good night for Kovalev. However, depending on how much Andre Ward is allowed to hold or get inside or wrestle, how quick the breaks are early in the fight, we could see a very similar fight if Andre Ward immediately starts coming in, working his way inside, and wrestling with Kovalev. I don't necessarily think that Kovalev is going to use the same strategy with trying to tie Ward up in those instances and try to get on top of his head. So I think he's going to be much more interested in punching when Ward is doing that, and that's going to work out much better for him. But overall, I think that the way that their styles line up, even though people don't think Kovalev is a good inside fighter, I think that he has the tools to keep Andre Ward on the outside. As long as he uses them, I think that he's going to have a good night this Saturday. So that's my prediction. I'm picking Kovalev. I'm on the fence about whether I think it'll be a knockout or like a late stoppage or anything. But I kind of think that it will. And that's all based off of the fact that I think that Kovalev, he just has a better line of offense. As you saw, most of the clean punching in the first fight was from Kovalev. If you saw any like highlights of stuff, there were some jabs and some decent hooks that Ward landed, but most of the notable punches were from Kovalev, and I think that might remain the same. But I'm not counting Ward out. I know that it has the potential to be a very, very close fight, and we'll see how their game plans change and where each fighter kind of takes the fight. A couple side notes. Someone mentioned in the comments of one of my videos that there was a point in the fight that Kovalev stopped cutting the ring off, and that also had an impact on the last few rounds. So he's going to need to continue to do that. But one of the interesting things that Andre Ward does He doesn't like, nobody likes getting hit, right? That's like one of the stupidest things anybody can ever say, right? But he's very competitive. So when he does get hit, he tries to answer. And that would be a really interesting wrinkle if Kovalev were to make him pay for those very obvious attempts at, retribution for punches, right? Yeah. Anyway, I think that if Kovalev doesn't gas, that it's gonna be a good night for Kovalev, and I'm picking him. I'm picking him to win the fight. I'm not sure how, but I just think that he's going to be able to do it this time. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm not sure if I talked about everything that I was supposed to talk about, but it's been 25 minutes, and I don't have any fucking notes, so I can't remember. I should really do these better. Yeah.